to strike
Hey,
with
Carlos.
the Quran demand.
Carlos, I'm so sorry.
But the president has to pick it up. Thank you.
We have some breaking news. Otherwise, I wouldn't cut you off so abruptly. Carlos Warner, thanks for joining us.
Let's get now
to Boston. Apparently, there's been an explosion at the Boston Marathon, I am told. One of our producers, Matt Frucci, is there on the ground talking to us by phone. What can you tell us, Matt?
Hi. It was about 15, 20 minutes ago near the finish line on Boylston Avenue here in Boston when I heard two explosions. The first one I saw up closer to the finish line from where we were. It was big. It was booming. I saw a big mountain of smoke come up. And about 10 seconds later, across the street from me, on the sidewalk, another big explosion. People are hurt. They've stopped the Boston Marathon. Everyone rushed indoors. I'm now inside the Copley Plaza Mall looking out on the scene, and I can see swarms of police officers treating people on the scene. I count at least 5, 6 people hurt, but I have a feeling there are more.
So describe the injuries as you can see them, Matt, and how far away are you from the area?
I'm in the area now, about 30 feet away from Boylston Avenue, which is where the scene is happening. I'm actually up elevated on the corridor that goes from one mall to another, but I can see it through glass doors. I'm going to see one woman walking away now, limping, covered in a sheet. I see 3 or 4 people on the ground being treated by paramedics, but I have a feeling there are more off to the left where I can't see, which is where that explosion was just across the street from me. It was a pretty big explosion. When we were all fleeing away, I could see that there were a bunch of people piled around what may have been a trash can or something there across the street. I'm not entirely sure.
Now, describe the scene of where this took place, Matt, for someone who isn't perhaps familiar with the Boston area. Is this an area that it obviously has, businesses, or what is it?
This is the finish line of the Boston Marathon. It's the very final mile. So it's not only crowded with runners who are running down the streets, but it's also crowded with crowds lining both sides. I mean, thousands of people on both sides. We're now being moved out of the mall, so I'm not going to have eyes on the scene anymore. But I can tell you that there were thousands of people in the area. I don't know how many hurt. I can only count about 6 or 7 from what I've seen so far.
What are people there who witnessed this saying? What are their concerns? And do you think that these were members of the crowd that were injured, or were these people taking part in the marathon?
It looked like it was more members of the crowd. It looked like it happened on the sidewalk, not on the street itself. In the first big explosion that I heard, when I looked up the street, it didn't look like it was on the street itself either. It looked like it was off to the side. So on a sidewalk, or perhaps a parking lot or building, I'm not entirely sure. It was off in the distance.
Is this the finish line for the Boston Marathon? Where is it in terms of, is it near any of the sites that might be familiar to people?
Yeah, I mean, the big one is Copley Plaza Mall, which is where I'm inside right now, which is attached to the Prudential Center, which I believe is the tallest building in Boston.
Okay, and I want to tell you, Matt, we are looking at some live photos here, what appear to be authorities. It's difficult to make out, but it does appear that it is a stretcher, if I'm not mistaken, although we're not for sure about that. We're seeing some authorities walk down the street there in Boston, and we can see a number of police vehicles. Do we have Mike Brooks on the phone?
I'm here live with you, Brianna.
Okay, we have Mike Brooks live with us. Mike, what can you see, especially as you're looking at the pictures here?
Yeah, it does look like fire and EMS are there on the scene. It's hard to see in the small monitor here, trying to get a larger monitor up so I can see exactly what's going on. But it does look like Boston Fire EMS there on the scene. At least one stretcher from what I'm seeing, Brianna. And I'm reaching out to some of my sources right now to try to find out exactly what's going on up there. As I looked, it looks like a number of patients being treated. I'm going to get up here and walk over and take a look at this a little closer. I see at least 1, 2, 3, 4, possibly 4 patients there being treated at the scene. A large number of fire personnel, EMS, Brianna, there on the scene. But it's hard to tell exactly the extent of injuries that we're looking at right now. But it does look like a number of EMS teams working on multiple patients there at the scene, Brianna.
And Matt, I think you're still with me. At what point in the event did this happen?
This is near the end of the race. I mean, most of the top finishers had already finished about an hour or 2 ago, but my brother is running, and he still probably had another 45 minutes to go. So there's still a lot of people left on the race. I mean, I think 25,000 plus people run, and maybe half of them and more had already gone through, but the rest were still coming.
Matt, talk to us about this. Sort of take off your producer hat for a moment and put on your brother hat. Your brother was in this race, and I'm sure, and obviously you're right there near where this happened. How much concern do you have having gone there for what is supposed to be a very almost a joyous occasion in a way, where your brother is doing something so difficult, and instead you're there witnessing this happen?
I believe my brother's fine because he was a good 45 minutes away from the finish line. We're trying to contact my other brother and his kids now because they were somewhere on the other side of the street. We're hoping they're okay, and they should be okay because we think they're another block or two down on the other side. But it's tough to get phone signals out right now. I was lucky enough to get through you. I have 3 other family members dialing my brother and sister-in-law frantically right now to make sure they're okay. And at the very least, tell them to stay away from trash cans because someone muttered that to us once. So I don't want to say that's where the explosions came from, but that's what people here are theorizing.
Okay, Matt, stay with us for just a moment. I do want to turn now to Lou Palumbo. He is the director of Elite Intelligence and Protection. He's overseeing security at a number of major sporting events. Lou, what goes into security at an event like this, to try to prevent something like this? And are you surprised that this happened, or is this something that is obviously just ultimately a fear and sort of a vulnerability of something like a marathon?
Well, I think to say it's a vulnerability is conservative. As we all know, we're very porous as a nation. You would always hope that events like this would not take place, but I will tell you, it's in the forefront of the minds of law enforcement anytime an event like this is staged. You know, you're hoping the intelligence community has kind of an edge on things to where if there is information floating around regarding a possible threat, they'd be on it. You know, a lot's going to go into this now. You know, at this point, you're going to have the FBI in response, Boston PD, their bomb squad, the ATF, you know, emergency medical. They're going to be pulling cameras in the area. There's a whole process underway right now, but the reality of the situation is it is almost impossible to protect an event, especially one that is over a protracted space as a marathon is. And, you know, I hate to say it, but these are the times that we live in.
So when you say that they're pulling cameras, they will be looking obviously to see. We've heard from Matt. Some people wondered if it wasn't from a trash can in the area. What will they be looking for, Lou?
Well, on the cameras, they're going to try to pick up activity. I mean, depending on how far back.
And let me tell you, just a moment. We are looking at pictures right now of what appears to be that explosion with smoke rising. We actually could see. It did appear that we saw at least one person fall down, although it looked like perhaps their injuries were minor. But we are looking, just to give you a sense of what was described as 2 huge bangs, 2 huge explosions that happened there at the Boston Marathon. And witnesses reported seeing the smoke that you just saw there. We're looking at authorities sort of rushing to the scene. These are some of the first pictures that are coming into CNN from our affiliate WBZ. This happened just moments ago near the finish line of the Boston Marathon. And Lou, are you able to see these pictures?
I am watching.
So what are you seeing as you see that explosion and you see the authorities rushing toward the area?
Well, at this point, you know, they're attempting to identify first and foremost what exactly took place. And without going too far out on the limb, I would conservatively say that these were probably planned explosions. At this point, they're handling a crime scene. So on top of the fact that they're trying to render aid to anyone that may have been injured, they're now dealing with this as a crime scene. They're trying to identify exactly what took place, what explosive was used, if an explosive was used, the nature of it, whether accelerants. They're reviewing cameras, as I mentioned to you a few moments ago. There's a whole undertaking at this point, and I will say to you that they will gather a tremendous amount of information probably in the next few hours as to exactly what took place in those garbage pails, if in fact that was the location that the explosion occurred.
And I just want to bring people up to speed on what we are looking at. 2 explosions there at the Boston Marathon. This happened near the finish line of the event. It seems at least 6 people were hurt. That is according to one of our CNN producers who was on the ground. And also, if we can go, is that right? We have Adam Eigner on the phone as well.
heard anything?
Actually, we have Alina Cho with us, who can describe some of what she is seeing there on the scene. Alina, what can you tell us?
Well, obviously, Brianna, these pictures are just terrifying to watch when you see the people, as we did a moment ago, just running away from that large plume of smoke. What we can tell you, as you've been reporting, is that CNN has confirmed there have been a pair of explosions in downtown Boston near the finish line. I went to school in Boston, Brianna. I'm an alum of Boston College, and so I could just tell you that this happened in Copley Square, which is in the center of downtown Boston. This is a day, I might add, the third Monday of April, when this race is run every year on Patriots Day. That is traditionally a very festive day. People take the day off of work, lots of people out on the streets. And so you can imagine the streets of Boston were jam-packed today. And as Matt Frucci, our producer, pointed out, about half of the runners had finished, but half had not. So this race was in progress. As you've been reporting, our early reports are that a half a dozen people have been injured, but these are very preliminary reports. I have seen some early tweets online from the Boston Globe breaking a witness reports hearing two loud booms. Runner's World, the press room is on lockdown. Someone else, an explosion just went off in downtown Boston. So obviously a very terrifying scene. Very early on, we're still trying to gather more information, and we'll bring that to you as soon as we get it. Brianna?
Alina Cho, thank you for that. And let's go now on the phone to Boston, where actually one of our White House producers, Adam Eigner, is there. He is there on the scene and on the phone with us. So, Adam, we understand from Matt Frucci, one of our other colleagues, that there appears to be about a half a dozen people. That's just a rough estimate of folks that he saw injured. Can you tell us any more about what you're seeing? Can you see the scene, and sort of what is the mood there?
Well, currently, Brianna, I'm about 1 mile from the scene. I was about a little over a mile when the explosions reportedly took place. Right now, people aren't in a panic. Right after it happened, to walk past me and said he was headed in the other direction because there were apparently two explosions that had taken place and that they were headed in my direction. I would say that people are relatively calm. For the most part, no one seems to know exactly that this has happened yet. As Alina said, this is a very festive day in Boston. As a native, it's a New England holiday, and currently everyone seems to be calm where I am, but we'll see how it gets when we get closer.
And obviously they will, and I know you're sort of making your way. I can hear you sort of huffing and puffing a little bit as you try to head to the scene there. You said it's a New England holiday. This is something that takes place, obviously, 26.2 miles in Boston, and it finishes up in sort of a dramatic fashion there in downtown Boston near the Boston Public Library. You've obviously been familiar with this event for many years, Adam. What do you think? News of this is obviously going to spread. This is something. Do you think people have ever even really thought about this as a concern? Do they take precautions? Is there normally any concern?
Well, there was certainly a lot of security here for the Boston Marathon. Lots of police officers along the way. Lots of uniformed military personnel. I would say that the finish line near Boston Public Library, as you said.
Matt, take us back. Describe to us where you were. You were waiting for your brother. He's running in the marathon. You said he still had about 45 minutes to go. Tell us again, what was your vantage point, and describe the scene right before and right after you heard these explosions.
Sure. I was on Boylston Avenue, which is the main thoroughfare in Boston. It's where the runners are making their final mile towards the finish line. It's packed with runners down the middle of the street, and it's packed with spectators on both sides. About 30 minutes ago at this point, I guess, there was a big explosion about 100 yards towards the finish line from where I was standing. It wasn't in the middle of the street. It was off to the side of the street, perhaps on the sidewalk or a parking lot. I'm not entirely sure. I heard a big boom, saw a giant plume of smoke, and then about 10 seconds later, about 30 yards from me, or even 20 yards, across the street, another big explosion, didn't seem as big as the first one, went off on the sidewalk. And that's when everyone started to scramble. There's a mad push for people to get away from the scene, not knowing if there are more explosions to come. But it seems like Those are the last ones that I saw. About moments later, they stopped running of the marathon, so they stopped the race, and they started clearing out the area, and ambulances and EMTs have swarmed in.
What were people saying, Matt? The folks who were there for the who were there to watch.
People were saying they were scared. I mean, I know we got sort of shoved into a building, and there were people who were freaking out inside the building, saying they weren't sure if something was going to happen inside the building, if that was a safer place to be. But soon enough, everyone sort of went onto the sidewalk and found their way off of Boylston Avenue, and the cops sort of rushed everyone away from the scene.
All right, and we are looking obviously at scenes. This is right during one of the explosions that has happened near the finish line of the Boston Marathon, coming to us from our affiliate WHDH. This was just moments ago as the marathon was approximately half finished. The top runners had come through a long time before there were these two explosions, one of which you're seeing the aftermath of right there, smoke coming up in a big plume. We're hearing from one of our producers there on the ground that it was this large bang on one side of the street, and then not far away, there was another one that appeared to be smaller. You can see just how many people there are at the end, near the end of that final stretch of the Boston Marathon. Crowds obviously gathered there in the bleachers to watch runners coming through for what is a huge event in Boston. And you see the security personnel there running to investigate the scene. If I have Lou Palumbo on the phone with me, Lou, when you're looking at these at the security staff running toward the event, what are they trying to do? Are they running towards the victims? Are they trying to, and we're seeing obviously there some of the EMS carrying some of those who are injured. What are they trying to do, and how do they secure this area, obviously in case there's even more danger?
Well, the first thing they are doing is they're running to render aid to anybody that they feel may have been injured as a result of these explosions. At the same time, the radio calls are going into headquarters to get additional resources there because they have to now figure out what took place there. They have to contain the area, treat it like a crime scene. There's a number of things that have to take place simultaneously, but their initial response is driven by people in need.
And we're going to head now. Thank you to all of you. Stand by for my colleague Wolf Blitzer. He will be taking over coverage right now following two explosions, it appears, in Boston during the Boston Marathon. Wolf, to you now.
Brianna, thanks very much. This is a dramatic development, clearly, certainly unexpected. We do not know what caused these explosions. We do not know the complete extent of the injuries. We do know that at least a dozen people appear to have been injured in these twin explosions right at the finish line of the Boston Marathon. It's a 26-mile, 385-yard marathon, and it was wrapping up when you look at these devastating pictures right at the finish line. These are pictures that were shot just moments ago. Mike Brooks, our law enforcement analyst, is standing by. You look at these pictures, Mike, and you say to yourself, what happened here? Obviously, we don't know. I know law enforcement is on the scene, but it's pretty gruesome.
It really is, Wolf. And you see people rolling around. I'm looking at this smoke, and I spent a lot of time on the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force there in Washington, have worked bombings all over the world. I look at this, I'm thinking maybe a black powder kind of device, Wolf. It's early, it's hard to say, but I'm just hearing also from my sources in Boston that police and fire right now, they're responding to a possible suspicious device, excuse me, at the Mandarin Hotel on Boylston Street. So, right now, everybody is at a heightened state of alert, needless to say, because you always worry. We've had two devices that we're hearing now, Wolf, but you always are concerned as first responders of more devices. So right now, they are going to probably, that whole area downtown is shut down. And we see a number of people. I'm hearing that from my sources up there also that there might be two critical injuries. Still trying to find out whether, the extent of injuries of the people with these first two devices, though, Wolf.
It could be two explosions. It could be even more than two explosions, clearly timed to coincide with the completion of this marathon. Literally thousands and thousands of runners participating in this annual event in Boston, but you look at these aerial shots coming in, you see some serious damage in the buildings nearby.
You do, and when you have, whether it be a pipe bomb, what kind of improvised explosive device that was used today, Wolf, there's a lot of damage, and now you've got a very, very large post-blast scene. We see first responders now, police, fire, EMS, in the area. You see them, they've got precautionary line charts because they don't know exactly what they have. Early on in something like this, Wolf, you're always concerned because, we've seen a number of incidents here in the United States where there have been secondary, third devices that were used against first responders who were there coming to the aid of those who have been injured.
Is it possible? I mean, it's certainly possible. It could have been a generator exploding or some gas lines exploding, something along those lines, as opposed to foul play. We obviously don't know what caused these at least twin explosions.
No, we don't, and that's why we're very use a lot of caution when we're talking about this because we don't know. But if I'm looking right there, Wolf, from what I saw from that, is that something that's typical, atypical of a gas explosion, a generator explosion? It's hard to say, but to have two of them happen at that same time, we don't know exactly what caused that. We're trying to find out more from people who were there on the scene.
Let me bring in Matt Frucci, our CNN producer who's on the scene, an eyewitness to what he saw. And for viewers, Matt, who are just tuning in right now, just methodically tell us where you were and what you saw.
Sure. I was on Boylston Avenue, which is sort of the final stretch of the Boston Marathon, maybe the final mile or two. I was packed with thousands of spectators on either side. It was packed with thousands of runners making their final sprint to the finish. And about 100 yards up from me, closer to the finish line, I heard an explosion, turned and saw a big plume of smoke rising out of what looked like a sidewalk or a parking lot. I'm not entirely sure. It wasn't on the street. It was off the street. That much I could tell. Everyone sort of paused, wondered what the heck that was.
Could you tell if it looked like it was, it's hard to discern, obviously, if it looked like an explosion coming from some sort of city infrastructure, a gas line or a generator, something along those lines, or did it look like something obviously much more serious, much more sinister, some sort of foul play?
My first instinct was maybe it was some sort of a steam pipeline or something, and it was like manholes exploding because it looked like it was coming from the sidewalk itself as opposed to anything on top of it. But again, I didn't have a great look at it. That's just my first gut instinct on what it was. I did hear some people say, watch out for the trash cans. They heard it was the trash cans. But again, that's just maybe sort of mob mentality, just trying to figure out what the heck it is. So I'm not sure. I didn't see fire. I only saw smoke. And even on the explosion that was right across the street from me, I never saw anything that looked like fire of an explosion. It looked like more smoke just exploding up.